Hello and welcome to another reaction video. This week we're reacting to Reggie playing Total War Warhammer. So yeah, sit back and enjoy. Damn, that's a honker.
Gentlemen, I have a few questions. Do you like money? Do you believe in the purity of late-stage capitalism? And finally, do you ever dream of using illegal immigrants to start an unlicensed gold mine in your backyard? I know I do, which makes me uniquely suited for today's challenge, because we will be playing as King Lord Beezer of the Noblar Empire, and our goal is to amass a treasury of 1 million gold. Then I can finally retire and go home to my hideously disfigured Noblar wife. That's my dream, and I'm willing to commit as many Ponzi schemes as it takes to see it through. So, can we use aggressive business strategies to make our million, or will we be extorted and assaulted by stronger and less financially literate species? There's only one way to tell. Now, let us begin. The first and most important step in any money-making strategy is ad time. 14 years ago, my life was a living nightmare because I was using an unoptimized web browser. It was so inefficient and hogged so many of my resources that there was hardly anything left to feed my wife and 19 children. We had to survive on rations of 200 kilobytes of RAM a month. But all of that changed because they didn't make it. And also, I started using the sponsor of today's video, Opera GX. Opera is the refined man's browsing experience. It allows you to limit memory usage, and by downloading mods, you can customize the browser to your exact specifications. For example, mine has its own wallpaper, along with background music and custom sound effects for opening and closing tabs. But by far, the best part is the keystrokes. When I edit my voiceover, I have to manually remove hundreds of instances of me inhaling, and it bothers me because it feels like a waste. So I humbly prostrate myself before you, the viewer, and offer my collection of pulmonary ventilation to accompany your each and every keystroke. Now you can close your eyes and pretend I'm right there with you. But Opera isn't content to stop there. They've also integrated helpful software such as ChatGPT into their browser. I find this extremely useful because I don't have time to keep up on current events. So I ask Opera's generative AI to summarize entire scientific articles in a single word. Then I take all of those single words, put them in a Google Doc, and ask Opera to summarize that. Now, thanks to Opera GX, I have the cumulative knowledge of the entire scientific community condensed into a singular word.
Nice.
Garage. Truly fascinating. I want to invite you to join my scientific journey by downloading Opera GX today. And don't worry, it has plenty of tools to import your data from other browsers, so your transition will be completely painless. Thank you, Opera GX. Now, back to the video. We start the campaign by killing our closest neighbor before the cinematic zoom even finishes. If he didn't want this to happen, he shouldn't have had a small amount of pocket change on his person. Anyway, with that out of the way, welcome to Noblar country. Over here is our capital, the Scrap Towers, an entire city constructed from other factions' discarded junk. Basically, it's a landfill.
One man's garbage, another person's good on garbage.
And while it's already quite girthy, the garbage pile must grow. So I take military action against a nearby homeless shelter. When it comes to random trash, these people are practically millionaires. But they don't want to give it up without a fight, and whatever social welfare program they're on is providing them with chemical weapons. In response, I tried stoning them to death, but that wasn't working, so I switched to hand grenades, which fortunately got the job done. With the Skaven defeated, we can focus on infrastructural improvements, such as erecting giant piles of gold in all of our settlements. However, sensing our disposable income, my grandfather tries to sell me a life insurance policy, and when I decline, he unfriends me on Facebook and tries to kill us.
Hey, let's kill him. Let's kill this guy. Let's beat him to death with hammers.
This led to a series of battles across the province. I want to say that I pride myself on every unit in my army being expendable, because it makes me feel better when I kill all of them through my own negligence. However, you can't get much more expendable than an already dead body, so we had some trouble with Helmet. But if you ever find yourself being victimized by a 90-year-old man, simply pick up and throw a potato-sized rock at his head, and I promise you, he will never recover. That's what I did, and Helmet is now dead. Winning this war awarded us with the Golden Crown of King Lord, which makes Lord Beezer suck marginally less. With Helm and Gorst currently rot-maxing in a field, we can finally engage in the real Noblar gameplay, which is recruiting several drug addicts and sending them into the world on dog sleds to collect copper pipe for us.
It's weird that Noblars are very unique
trucks.
to the
Each
ogre
trash pile that they collect
makes
has
me
a
wonder
random
what other
item along with a few hundred scrap, which I can use in multiple ways. I could staple it to my soldiers as a form of Kevlar armor. It works just okay. Or I could use it to pay criminals to rob people for me. For example, I just stole 6,000 gold from Imrich, and there's not a goddamn thing he can do about it. This might not seem like a lot, but as my garbage armada grows, we're going to be collecting a lot of scrap. Unfortunately, there are others that wish to usurp my garbage throne. Perhaps the only person who enjoys the filth of a landfill more than me is Kugoth. So I decided to share my scrap metal with him, in the sense that I launched it out of a catapult and eviscerated thousands of his sewage-covered followers. Kugoth actually defeated me in a few battles, because the anatomy of a Noblar does not hold up well against giant predatory insects. However, it is the shared mental illness of every artillery commander to believe that you are exactly one volley away from winning the entire battle. So obviously I tried again,
just keep firing
and things went so poorly that I just conceded halfway through. Thankfully, our luck changed when I unlocked my greatest ability, Lord Beezer's Royal Knob Cheese. When I bring this bad boy out, you're looking at an explosion of poor hygiene that kills even the most grizzled slop connoisseur. I know, that sounds excessive, but let me tell you something. When Lord Beezer walks up to you and smears his chunky knob cheese across your face, you'll wish you were dead. With that, we finished off Kugoth and conquered the Dragon Isles. Given that all of our immediate neighbors are now dead, we can enter phase 2 of my money-making strategy, cutting costs. You see, I dream of a world where every one of my soldiers is paid not in gold, because that belongs to me, but rather with a firm handshake and a gentle kiss. Unfortunately, the labor unions don't share my vision, and these armies get really expensive, so I'm going to settle for downsizing. However, in case it wasn't obvious when I blew up that old man with a hand grenade, Warhammer is a pretty dangerous place. And just like how a hermit crab needs a shell or a transvestite hooker needs a pimp, I too require a source of protection. This is why I will ingratiate myself to the living heart attack that is Greasus Goldtooth. Greasus is a violent and deranged lunatic who is, first and foremost, morbidly obese. That last part is important because it means he understands me. He knows what it's like to want more than you need and to kill thousands to acquire it. So to gain his favor, I've created a Noblar undercity in his capital. It increases our relations and provides me a percentage of his income every single turn, thus allowing me to suckle from his obscenely large teat. And dare I say, I like the flavor. I also put a couple of undercities in Cathay and built embassies to improve our relations. I am a Gwai Lo, and the Chinese want to hate me. They yearn to implement a no-child policy upon my bloodline, but they cannot resist Noblar diplomacy. With that taken care of, we've secured all of our borders except for the west, where the Chaos Dwarfs have been staring at me angrily for the past 10 turns. So I decided to break the ice by killing thousands of them at pig barter. This little social faux pas kicked off a pretty massive war between the Chaos Dwarves and my coalition of gluttony, and we spent the next 10 turns in a comedically painful arms race. For example, I unlocked a new hybrid unit called the Rust Bucket, so the dwarves shot them to death with rifles. Then I conjured a giant fist out of the sky and pounded my enemies into the dirt, so naturally they deployed thermobaric bombs on my entire army. It's hard to get ahead in this world, but eventually the garbage industrial complex came out on top and we started taking several dwarven cities which I do not want. So I sacked them for thousands of gold and then sold their burnt out remnants to Greasus for a few thousand more. The home invasion real estate pipeline is pretty lucrative, and it allowed me to surround myself in a protective layer of obesity. Just as I was selling off my last dwarven properties, the most sexually ambiguous man alive declared war on me.
Hi, can I have a foot-long cock? I mean, oh fuck.
This Yakubian ape might not look like much, but his armies have some of the best mounted units in the game. Little does he know, we also have cavalry. However, budget cuts hit pretty hard this season, so I had to settle for piggyback cavalry outfitted with random kitchenware. Either way, I was excited to see how this would play out, but by the time I got down to Imrich's territory, he had already been been killed by a colony of rats.
Oh,
this
nice.
is truly a high elf moment.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
So, I compromised by killing the Skaven instead. They did try to stop me, but unfortunately for them, their struggle for life coincided with me unlocking giants, domesticated rhinoceros, and whatever the hell this thing is.
What?
By the time I wiped them out, I had sold so much of their land
Smashing
that
his
not
way
only
through.
had we made 150,000 gold, but Greasus
nice.
decided to fully commit to his pay-piggy lifestyle by offering to become my vassal and provide me tribute every single turn, meaning that I have completely inverted our power dynamic,
Oh,
and
sweet.
my pimp is now paying for the privilege of protecting me. And fortunately so, because Strength Rank 3 Ungrim Iron Fist has just declared war on us, and let me tell
Dwarves.
you, I am afraid of this man. Never mind the fact that his army has
Never trust a
flamethrowers,
dwarf.
attack helicopters, and an entire machine dedicated to
What?
throwing axes at you. Ungrim himself is nearly invincible. My first battle against him went pretty good, because within 10 minutes I had disabled his artillery and killed most of his infantry. But what followed was 40 minutes of Ungrim using his thick dwarven fingers to personally perform a prostate exam on every member of my army. Being
Damn.
manhandled in such a way was fundamentally incompatible with my brain chemistry. So,
feel
much
like a
like a
mosh
lobster,
pit.
I had to physically dissolve my brain and assume a new submissive identity. That was the only way I could prevent an otherwise unavoidable suicide. Don't get me wrong, this wasn't my first choice. In fact, I did everything in my power to stop this little freak. I tried using poison-tipped spears, ramming him with a rhinoceros, and I even resorted to calling in artillery strikes. At the end of the day, the only thing that
water off a
proved
duck's
even
back.
marginally effective was human wave tactics, and he personally killed 700 Noblars before finally giving up.
Damn.
Fellas, this is what we classify as
That's
an
a
auto-resolve
scary
only
dwarf.
character. Anyway, with the world's most fatal proctologist forced into retirement, we were able to piece up the rest of his empire without too much trouble, and all of it went directly towards empowering Greasus. In fact, by this point, I was learning to control
Gotta
him,
love
much like a
Greasus.
fleshy new appendage. Now finally, I am surrounded on all sides by people who, through the use of intense propaganda, have been converted into my friends. And so begins phase 3 of our plan. You see, over the past 60 turns, my garbage crews have been scouring the globe in search of highly valuable artifacts. And as a result, I have discovered several very large and very wealthy cities. Cities inside of which I may construct my Noblar underbellies. And, little known fact, each underbelly is connected by a series of tunnels, meaning that I can travel between them. For example, I can use my tunnels to travel from my starting area all the way to Lustria in a single turn.
Oh,
and
nice.
once I'm there, I can just go hog wild, sacking every settlement I find. Because when I'm this far away from home, my actions do not have consequences. You want to know the best part? Lord Beezer's abilities allow him to make about 75% more gold from sacking settlements, meaning that when I walk up to Gorok's holy city and take a big fat shit in the streets, I am
Lizzos.
compensated to the tune of 15,000 gold. So that's exactly what I did. I went to Lustria and spent the next 15 turns fist-fighting wild animals, such as this weird-looking gecko and one particularly smelly little rat. They put up a pretty
That's
good
fine, you
fight,
can
but
kill
by
the
this point,
Skaven.
I was a quirked-up Noblar covered in his own feces, which, for the uninitiated, is the strongest form of Noblar. After I was done explaining to the wildlife that they're not allowed to own property, I'd take their territory and sell it off to the huntsman to maximize profits. With this technique, it wasn't long before I was at 300,000 gold. Only
nice.
700,000
Getting
more
there.
to go. But my real estate empire was quickly derailed when
No.
Gorok's obese cousin started consuming all of my customers. This sounds bad, but actually it ushered in the next evolution of my money-making strategy. In an effort to prevent Mazda Mundi from mukbanging all of my clients, I teleported to his capital city, sacked it for 22,000 gold, then I used my scrap metal to create a faction of Noblar resistance fighters which purchased his capital from me for 3,000 gold and some diplomatic agreements. With that, we now have a fully autonomous Noblar junta operating in Central America, and
Oh,
since
sweet.
most of Mazda Mundi's armies are currently elbow deep inside Marcus's colon,
Oh man, your ass feels great.
I was able to rip through his territory, sacking everything
Oh,
and selling
dear.
it back to my new vassal. This took a while, but by the end of it, our stockpile of gold had passed 650,000. With profits
awesome.
like that, it was clear that this was
Getting
God's
there.
will. So that was my new hustle, teleporting to major urban areas, destroying them in one turn, initiating a military coup, and then teleporting off to the
rebellion.
next target. It's also worth mentioning that at this point, I had fully leaned into the diplomatic playstyle, with embassies in several major factions, along with plenty of research and even some special buildings all artificially boosting my relations relations with the AI. Furthermore, I was a founding member of the Chinoger Military Alliance, which was one of the strongest in the game, meaning that no one wanted to fight me. Basically, I was a bully, but a bully that everyone liked and respected. So when I would tunnel my way over to your capital city and beat the shit out of you, it was treated as an act of God, and no one would interfere. However, a consequence of being so popular is that everyone wants to make deals with you, even if they make absolutely no sense. What's that, Yon Bo? You want to pay me 600 gold for military access to my territory 7,000 kilometers away? No problem.
Sounds
or
good.
my personal favorite, when I went to war with Gorok and Zhao Ming joined on my side. Eventually, Gorok paid me for a peace treaty. Then, 5 turns later, Zhao Ming paid me to rejoin the war. Then, Gorok paid me again for peace, and Zhao Ming paid me again for war. This cycle continued for the entire game, despite the fact that neither myself, Gorok, or Zhao Ming had even fought each other for the past 60 turns. Beyond that, I was also reifying my position as a global leader by manipulating international relations. For example, the Chaos Dwarves and Archaon were getting a little too friendly, and I didn't want them to ally against me. So I took an army up north and beat the hell out of one of Archaon's little gimp allies. This pissed him off real good, so he chased after me directly into Chaos Dwarf territory. Then, once he was inside, I used my heroes to spam block his army over and over again, trapping him within their borders and running up the trespassing penalty until the Chaos Dwarves absolutely hated him. It's difficult to control the world through a series of secret societies and subtle plots, but it's all worth it. Anyway, back to work. I took Beezer over to Araby and attempted to initiate diplomacy with Rapunzel. To facilitate this, I spoke with the most intelligent Frenchman in the entire kingdom, but unfortunately, communication was still impossible. So clearly, I had to euthanize them. Rapunzel tried to stop me, and she had enough artillery to make it competitive. But in the battle of weird equestrians versus homeless man on a garbage throne, the homeless win every time. I spent the next 10 turns remodeling North Africa into a Noblar colony, passing 800,000 gold in the process. But when Ikit Claw attempted to muscle in on my operation, I had to put him in his place. I thought this would be easy, but the reality of the situation is that he has sniper teams, Gatling guns, and weapons of mass destruction. Meanwhile, I have an entire army suffering from late-stage tetanus. So I decided to grit my teeth, grab the bull by the horns, and completely fuck it up.
No. Oh god.
The defeat of Beezer had signaled the end of my African campaign, but that's alright, because we've got bigger things to worry about. You see, the endgame crisis just popped, and I have a handful of child coal miners trying to invade my territory. More importantly though, I noticed they have a ridiculously wealthy capital city. If we can fight our way there and sack it, it'll easily push us past our goal of 1 million gold. The issue is that I have only 2 armies back home, one of which is just 800 people LARPing as cavalry, and the other is my Foreign Legion, which is composed of about 7,000 level 1 Noblars and a few Chinese guys. I did my best to stop the Dwarven advance, but I am thoroughly convinced that the Kaida Destroyer was selectively bred over several generations to create the perfect Noblar extermination device. This is the plight of my people. So their main general Sisted Vargarl humiliated me in several battles across the region. With each defeat, I grew to hate him more and more. In fact, if I could kill one person in this entire world, it would be myself. But if I could kill 2, it would be myself and then him. Fortunately, my CBT session was cut short when Lord Beezer became available for recruitment. From here, I built myself 2 new armies, grouped up with Greasus, and set out to retake the Holy Land. Our first battle was at the gates of Zar. Greasus met me on the field with an entire army of British women.
What the fuck? That looks vaguely racist, brother.
Utterly terrifying. Meanwhile, I was bringing hundreds of rust buckets, scrap launchers, and a mobile suit Gundam. Conversely, the enemy army was entirely goblins, and within 5 minutes it was entirely dead goblins.
Nice, look at that thing go.
The warpath continued, with us fighting our way through several battles, until finally we had reached Zarnagrund. With us sitting at 980,000 gold, this is all we need to win. Obviously, it's time to pull out my secret weapon.
He's pulling his cock out!
By spending 500 scrap, I was able to enact the not wasting stuff procedure, otherwise known as cannibalism.
Nice.
By encouraging my soldiers to consume their fallen comrades in the middle of battle, they can regenerate their health and die painfully about 12 seconds later than they would have otherwise. otherwise. Also, it saves me a ton of money. With my army now appropriately min-maxed, I began the siege of Zarnagrund by hurling 9 months of precious refuse directly at my enemy's defenses. Their walls couldn't handle it, because they're not garbage-pilled like we are, and within minutes my sloth enthusiasts were pouring through the gates, along with hundreds of Nobblars scaling the walls to the west. The fighting was fairly intense. Gun lines peppered my giants with incendiary bullets, flame elementals cooked my terracotta warrior to perfection, and above all else, a giant magma cannon was working around the clock to repaint the entire settlement with the blood of my Nobblars. That's a great plan, until the surviving Nobblars eventually swarm you and stab you to death with sharpened sticks. With their artillery taken care of, it was just a matter of time before they folded. And when they did, I sacked Zarnagrund for a total of 55,000 gold, putting us well over our 1 million milestone. So I stood there next to my closest ally, luxuriating in the bliss of my ill-gotten gains. But while I was doing this, I couldn't help but notice that Greasus has a literal treasure chest on the back of his mount. I wonder how much gold is in there. Maybe I can just take a little peek. Just a quick, come on, please. Grease it, please. Grease it, please. All right, so have it your way. I think we both knew all along that this was how it had to end. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank this month's patrons for supporting the channel, and finally, thank you for watching.
Oh, that was awesome. Oh yeah, big thanks to Reggie for making these videos, and big thanks for everyone who watched with me. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe to both Reggie and my channel. We also have a Discord if you're interested in that, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.